This episode is brought to you by Mubi, a global streaming service dedicated to elevating great cinema. Be sure to catch the cult classic The Fall, now streaming exclusively on Mubi in a spectacular new 4K restoration. Filmed across 24 countries over a period of 4 years, Tarsem Singh's ostentatious epic sees a bedridden stuntman played by a magnetically pace spin an escapist fantasy for a hospitalized young girl. You could start streaming this film and more for 30 days free at mubi.com/citycast. That's mubi.com/citycast. Today's the day that ballots are being mailed out to voters in Multnomah County, so it's crunch time for sorting through the head-spinning 90-plus candidates running for 12 open city council seats in Portland. And since we last looked into the candidates this summer, a lot has changed. So over the next week on CityCast Portland, we're covering the district races by honing in on the candidates with the most individual contributions in each district. And we'll be looking at what they are campaigning on, who's supporting them, and how they are standing out. And we're kicking it all off with District 1, which covers part of Northeast and most of Outer East Portland. Here to help us navigate the District 1 race is Maya Harris, founder of the voter education nonprofit organization Rose City Reform. It's Wednesday, October 16th. I'm Claudia Meza, and this is what Portland's talking about. You know, your organization might be a new name to a lot of listeners. Before we get into discussing District 1, what does Rose City Reform do?
So Rose City Reform is a nonprofit, nonpartisan research initiative, and we exist for two reasons, both to explain to Portlanders what is going on with Portland's reform process, and the big changes that are coming to City Hall, and also to explain to Portlanders what candidates will appear on their ballot. We have a website, rosecityreform.org, that lists all city candidates with profiles, and we have the ability to filter by endorsements, pledges, issues that matter to voters.
It just looks like something that everyone should maybe give a scroll through, just because we have so many candidates that we have to decide on. I mean, currently for District 1, there are 16 candidates running, but you've said that this is actually one of the easier races to get your head around. Like, why is that?
Yeah, because 16 is roughly half of the number of candidates that we have in districts like District 3 and 4. So yeah, 16 is, in the grand scheme of things, a pretty manageable bunch.
Well, I mean, I guess just the numbers. That does make sense. Before we get into individual candidates, in broad strokes, like, how is the race shaping up, in your opinion?
So I think the most important thing to remember about District 1, East Portland, is its importance in the reform measure itself. When we were debating whether to pass this reform measure 2 years ago, more representation for East Portland was really at the heart of the measure. It's one of the cornerstones. So who East Portland chooses to send to City Hall to represent them is going to be something that a lot of people and the media will be following really closely. There are 7 candidates in District 1 who have managed to qualify for public campaign financing. And that has become a marker of progress that a lot of media organizations are using. There is quite a bit of a wide range between those candidates in terms of their fundraising progress. So the top fundraiser has raised about 3 times as much as the 7th fundraiser. But even so, this is a really competitive race.
Yeah. Well, we have decided to look at 6 of the top candidates from each district as ranked by the number of individual contributions they've received. Our thinking is that looking at the total number of voters who've donated to them rather than like the total amount of money that they have will give us a broader picture of the community support that they have behind them. And at the very top of all of this is Steph Routh. As of October 7th, she has the most small donor contributors at 1,378. Could you just tell us just briefly, just like who these top 6 candidates are when I go through, just in case someone has not, heard of it?
Sure. Yeah. Steph Rath is also the top fundraiser overall in District 1, not just the one with the most contributions. And she's actually a top fundraiser across council districts as well. She is a transportation and sustainability advocate. She served on Portland's Planning Commission. She's very focused on walkable, bike-friendly neighborhoods. I think if you asked her, she'd probably say her top issue is housing and homelessness.
Gotcha. And next up is Candace Avalos. What is her platform all about?
So Candace Avalos works for an environmental nonprofit. She is also known for being heavily involved in criminal justice reform. She served on the city's police accountability commission, and I would say her focus is public and community safety. She also served as a charter commissioner, so she's one of the architects of the reform measure, and she's also run for office before. She ran for city council in 2020. That was the race that Carmen Rubio won. And now she's kind of come full circle, and Carmen Rubio has endorsed her candidacy, and she has endorsed Carmen Rubio in this election.
Interesting. I know she's also about investing in transportation and infrastructure. I know that seems to also be a big deal for East Portlanders, as one
for sure
could probably imagine why. So the next candidate is Timur Ender with 983 contributors.
Yeah, so he's an attorney and a transportation planner. It's a platform that's pretty similar to Steph Rath's in terms of having a big focus on infrastructure, housing, transportation, those types of things. He often talks about how East Portlanders have a lower life expectancy than the rest of Portland, and his platform has quite a few suggestions for how that can be mitigated in the built environment.
Gotcha. All right. Well, the next one is Jamie Dunphy. I feel like he's always in the news for either something that he kind of said, or implied or whatever. But we've had him on the show. He is definitely not into Live Nation. That is one thing that I know about Jamie. Tell me more about him.
Yeah, he works for the American Cancer Society. He also served as a staffer for the late city commissioner, Nick Fish. He worked for Jeff Merkley as well. Yeah, I think to a lot of your listeners, he's probably best known for being associated with Music Portland and being a big live music advocate and not a fan of Live Nation coming to Portland. I would say a big part of his platform is that music and entertainment can be an even bigger driver for Portland's economy. He's famous for saying that, quote unquote, there's no amount of police that can make the streets safer than a concert letting out at 2 a.m. And I think he often refers to livability as the focus of his platform.
Right. For the fifth candidate, we have Terrence Hayes. He has 529 contributors as of October 7th. Tell me more about Terrence.
Yeah, Terrence Hayes owns a graffiti removal company, and he also works with Portland Ceasefire, which is a city program that tries to reduce gun violence. He also has a lot of lived experience that he draws on because he's, as far as I know, the only candidate who's been incarcerated for a gun-related crime. His sentence, importantly, was later vacated by a Multnomah County judge, and his record was expunged. And now he works with police to improve relationships with the community. He is running on a pretty strong public safety platform. So focusing on ending public camping, public drug use, ushering people with addiction into recovery services. And he's now endorsed by the Portland Police Union.
Yeah, and it is important to note that he is the uncle of Quantus Derek Hayes, who was shot by the police. He was only 17 years old, and it was a big deal. It was like one of the shootings that a lot of people didn't think made a lot of sense as to how that went down. So it's interesting that he is, now endorsed by the police. And he also himself comes from a background where he was incarcerated for a handful of years. And so it's really interesting because his attitude is more like, enough of this. We got to figure this out together, which is really interesting because I think he's getting some flack for that. But I mean, it seems the contributors are up. So
yeah, it's a huge part of his platform. And he talks about his personal experiences a lot on the campaign trail.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about the last of the top 6, which was an upset because she joined so very last minute, and that's Loretta Smith. Tell me more about Loretta. If for some reason people just moved to town and they don't know about Loretta Smith.
Yeah, so Loretta Smith is definitely the candidate with the most name recognition in this race. She served 2 terms as a Multnomah County Commissioner, and she's also run for multiple other positions. So voters may have seen her name on the ballot. She ran against Dan Ryan for City Council in 2020. Ryan won that race, but it was pretty close. Her platform's also very focused on public safety. She's also one of the candidates that talks the most about bringing jobs to East Portland and job training and programs and stuff like that.
All right, let's take a quick break here. And when we come back, who out of the group are pushing more progressive policies and who are taking on a more moderate approach?
Ryan Reynolds here for, I guess, my 100th Mint commercial. No, don't. I mean, honestly, when I started this, I thought I only have to do like 4 of these. I mean, it's unlimited premium wireless for $15 a month. How are there still people paying 2 or 3 times that much? I'm sorry, I shouldn't be victim blaming here. Give it a try at mintmobile.com/save. Whenever you're ready.
$45 upfront payment equivalent to $15 per month. New customers on first 3-month plan only. Taxes and fees extra. Speed slower above 40 gigabytes. See details.
Oh, it's such a clutch off-season pickup, Dave.
I was worried we'd bring back the same team.
I meant those blackout motorized shades.
Blinds.com made it crazy affordable to replace our old blinds.
Hard to install?
No, it's easy. I installed these and then got some for my mom. She talked to a design consultant for free and scheduled a professional measure and install.
Hall of Fame son.
They're the #1 online retailer of custom window coverings in the world.
Blinds.com is the GOAT.
Shop Blinds.com right now and get up to 45% off select styles. Rules and restrictions may apply.
It appears that most of these candidates are a bit more on the progressive side, but there's still a kind of a clear divide between who's pushing more progressive policies and taking more of a moderate path. How would you sort these candidates if somebody was deciding to vote that way?
Yeah, I'll preface this by saying that I don't think that a lot of East Portlanders will vote that way. This is not a partisan race, and we just don't have the clear divide that, party labels create when you're choosing between candidates. And a lot of these candidates are running on the same
exact same
issues.
platform. Yeah.
But there are some defining differences. I think they're probably most noticeable to kind of analysts and media and pundits. Whereas voters are more interested in, does this candidate connect with me? Do they seem to listen to me? Are they going to fight for me at City Hall? But we are seeing, and this goes for all races, not just District 1, the same delineation that we're seeing between city commissioners Renee Gonzalez and Carmen Rubio in the mayoral race. So we're seeing one side leaning into more police alternatives to address homelessness, more community policing angle, whereas the Renee Gonzalez platform is more focused on enforcement and relying more on law enforcement to deal with unsheltered homelessness and addiction. So we are seeing that type of delineation between these candidates, with the first 4 that we discussed, Routh, Aulos, Ender, and Dunphy falling more into the progressive camp, and Hayes and Smith falling more into the moderate. And in Portland, moderate in many ways have
it's still progressive.
Yeah,
that's what I was trying to say.
Exactly.
I was like, let's be honest. These are all very progressive candidates, but they're still. And I guess that clear divide was really more of just like how they're willing to solve these issues. And what I find really interesting is that both Terrence Hayes and Loretta Smith, who I think historically a lot of people consider like come from marginalized communities that don't have the best relationship with our police force are willing to cross that bridge and also to lean into their tactics.
Yeah, and I think it's also interesting that when you look at an organization like East County Rising that was founded to empower marginalized communities in East County, they have endorsed all of these candidates. As they're not making a difference between them in terms of their ability to deal with these problems. So I think it's interesting that there are both some clear differences and a lot of similarities as well.
Mm-hmm. Well, one of the biggest surprises since we talked about this race here in CityCast Portland in July was Loretta Smith's entry into the race. Like, has that at all changed the District 1 race?
Oh, for sure. I think it really shook up the race. What it means, I have no idea. But Loretta Smith entered the race in July. So that was almost a year after some of the other candidates announced their candidacies. And I can only imagine it was a bit unnerving to other candidates to see her drum up support, both financial support and endorsement support. And, she's only been campaigning for about 3 months, and she's qualified for the public campaign financing program. She's endorsed by all of the sitting city council members who are running for office. And she has just name recognition. She has a lot of experience. So it's going to be really interesting to see here what happens in the next few weeks. It's all up in the air. It's really hard. There's no clear front runner in this race.
Yeah. And I'm curious if anything else has changed since July for District 1, aside from Loretta.
I think what has changed is that a lot of the endorsements have come out. That's the reason why we list endorsements in our candidate profiles. It's a really good way of looking at a candidate and kind of getting an idea of what they're about, what they stand for, who supports them without having to dig deep into their websites and policy platforms and all that stuff. And when we look at the candidates, mostly the progressive candidates, for instance, who have a lot of labor support, we can assume that will translate into helping them get out the vote and stuff like that. And the moderate candidates have more business support. The Realtors Association, for instance, will likely be getting out the vote as well. So there are a lot of forces at play, and other than the voters that are trying to influence this race.
Right. Well, what are the endorsements looking like? Like, how are the major institutional players lining up around these candidates?
I think I can talk about the progressive candidates as a
monolith
group here. I know it's usually you're not supposed to do that, but really, do they have the exact same endorsements? They don't have the exact same, but they have very similar groups endorsed. So the progressive candidates in this case, Raut Avalos, Endrin Dunphy, have most of the union support. They have support from environmental organizations like Sierra Club. It's a big endorsement. Social justice organizations. They're all endorsed by the Working Families Party. I think those are, shortcuts for voters to look at and get a sense of what the candidates stand for. And if you look at slightly more moderate candidates like Loretta Smith and Terrence Hayes, you'll see a lot of support from business groups. You'll see police and fire unions. You'll see elected officials like Renee Gonzalez or our new district attorney, Nathan Vasquez, some sheriffs as well. And one thing that has not happened yet, but that I think will have a big impact is the media organizations when they start issuing their endorsements. So far, we have not seen a lot of them, but the Scanner recently came out with their endorsements, and they endorsed Candace Avalos and Loretta Smith in District 1.
Oh, okay. And I know you mentioned that Terrence Hayes also has the endorsement of the Portland Police Union.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah. He does.
Did Loretta also get that endorsement?
She did, yes.
Seriously, can we just pause? This is so, I don't think people are understanding how, not crazy, but just interesting that is. It's just so interesting. There are the only two, Black Portland candidates, and they're the ones endorsed by the police. It weirdly makes me, I don't know what the word, not hopeful, but I'm just this is a shakeup in a way that I am keenly interested in.
Yeah, I think the impact of that endorsement also has grown. In 2020, that was maybe not an endorsement that candidates were touting very proudly, but public opinion has swung, and now we see candidates that are really promoting their endorsements from Portland Police.
Yeah. Well, before we wrap up, I'm just curious, like, if there's anything else that's been rising to the top for District 1, like certain concerns that you've maybe have heard or that maybe they should be looking into. Like, what are you thinking?
Well, I don't live in District 1, and so I'm aware of not being a good spokesperson for what's important to voters in that district. But I do think from what I've heard that it's really bread and butter issues. It's everything from faster emergency response times. When you call 911, you want a quick response, to fixing the potholes, more sidewalks, more parks, more street trees, less traffic accidents. This is an area of Portland with the most serious traffic, both the most and the most serious traffic accidents. So I think that is definitely on voters' minds. I think the other thing about District 1 that is both a challenge and a promise for these candidates is that they're probably dealing with some of the most disillusioned voters that don't have a lot of trust that City Hall is going to address their concerns. So I think this election will largely come down to the candidates that are out on the doorsteps kind of explaining that, I'm going to live in your district. I'm going to be accountable only to you. And I'm only going to represent this district. And we'll see who does the best job making that connection with the voters. I've heard from almost all of the candidates say that when they knock on doors, East Portland voters say, no one's ever knocked on my door before. So this is, it's a whole new paradigm. And I think this could be pretty exciting if East Portlanders do feel like they have more representation.
Yeah, East Portland, get ready to pretend like you're not home. Trust me. It gets old quick, but that's pretty sad to hear, it be said out loud. Like, oh, wow, you want my vote. Jeez. But yeah, thank you, Maya, so much for taking the time to go through what I consider one of the most interesting districts that we're seeing shape up. We're going to see what happens in the next couple years.
Yeah, can't wait to find out.
After we taped this interview with Maya Harris, the Oregonian rolled out their candidate endorsements and they picked Taryn Hayes, Noah Ernst, and Candice Avalos for City Council District 1. That's all for today here on CityCast Portland. Thanks so much for listening. If you enjoyed the show, please share it with a friend, rate or leave us a review. It really does help us out. We'll be back tomorrow morning with more from around the city. Until then, see you at Slim's.